What's up, guys? Spin Firearms here, and today we're going to be talking about are Glocks perfect? And I can't wait to drop this video because I know the comments are going to go crazy, which just helps the video, helps to get into the algorithm, and helps have people have a healthy debate. As long as you're respectful in the comments, I have no problem with what you're saying. I have no problem going back and forth. I have no problem saying why I think what I think versus what you think, and I'm open-minded, I'm understanding. And if you watch these videos, yes, I love Glock. Yes, I have over 30 Glocks. Yes, I carry a Glock majority of the time, but at the same time, I can be real and honest about Glock and their shortcomings. I can also be real and honest about my experience with them. So before we get started, hit the like button, drop a comment down below. I'd love to hear your experiences with Glocks. Why or why don't you carry them? Why or why not are they perfect? Is their saying or their slogan real? Right? And let's get into that. So one thing, whenever a Glock comes up, majority of the time, SIG comes up, right? It just is what it is. They are two of the biggest firearm companies out there that sell firearms at a reasonable price that tend to work. Now, hold on. I said tend to work. Some have issues. It just is what it is, right? That's across the board. Now, another thing I wanted to point out real quick, this has nothing really to do with the video, but I watched a video recently where they were saying that a bigger gap means the cheaper it is. That's not true at all. Don't believe that. The larger the gap does not mean the cheaper the firearm. And on top of that, I've had some really close gaps and some really tight gaps on firearms that are more expensive than this Glock 42 right here that dragged and had just, I mean, they just have drag, slide drag and stuff like that. It's hitting something, therefore it doesn't cycle the round properly. So don't believe that when it comes to gaps and stuff like that. But anyways, are Glocks perfect? The quick answer is no, right? Definitely not. Because there's a lot of things Glock could be doing better. Sorry, I'm somewhere else right now. I don't have all my Glocks with me. I only brought 5 firearms. But I'll tell you what is perfect about Glock. We're going to get into all that. But Glock struggles in a couple areas, right? And I get why they do it. There's a lot of reasons for what Glock does, and then there's also a lot of reasons for what they don't do that I don't understand, right? My favorite firearm is a Glock 26. The ease they could put a rail on that with is just mind-blowing. And they just dropped the Glock 26 Gen 5 MOS and left the rail off of it. Like, that is mind-blowing to me. So no, Glock is not perfect when it comes to what they give you right out of the box, right? No rail on a firearm today, on a Glock 26 size firearm, when you know that's what everyone wants from you, is absolutely crazy. Also, they dropped the Glock 43X originally and Glock 48 without a rail, without an optics cut. Now, for me, I don't think you need an optics cut. I would like the option to say, hey, I can get the optics ready version for, $50 more, or the non-optics ready version for, $50 cheaper. I don't carry an optic that often, and it just is what it is. I just prefer regular iron sights, and I know in self-defense encounters, you're rarely ever going to need an optic, let alone if you can't shoot with irons, you shouldn't have an optic on your firearm in the first place. It just is what it is. It's just reality. Now, I get if your eyesight is going out or, you're getting older and stuff like that. That's a great reason to get a red dot. I'm all for it. But for me, personally, I'm an iron sights type of guy. Now, that's another thing Glock is not perfect about at all. They give you the worst sights out of any firearm right out of the box. Let that sink in. A company that goes out there and says Glock perfection, but yet they give you the cheapest, crappiest, worst sights, and it's been like that. Now, I get if they did that up until the 2000s, maybe into the 2010s, but, where we're at today, that's insane. Give us some metal sights. I get that on some models you can get the upgraded night sights, but you can't do that on all the models. Whereas something like this Mossberg MC2SC that's $450, they give you some nice sights right out of the box. Now, they're nothing special, nothing great. You see it's a U-notch rear. You see that U? It's actually a really nice sight setup, very easy to shoot with, but my point is $450, that's cheaper than your average Glock, and they did it. Now, I get Mossberg isn't as solidified, and we're going to get into that as well when it comes to Glock. But there's a lot of things they could do. They could add texturing to their firearms, right? None of the Glocks have texturing. It's insane. That's why you see on all my Glocks, there's some sort of texturing. That's why you see on other firearms, I don't need it. When I'm shooting in the heat and I'm sweating, this texturing is just enough to do it. So on all my Glocks, I tend to end up putting grips on it, which there's nothing wrong with that. You want to have a good grip on your firearm, especially if it's hot where you live or if it gets cold where you live and you're going to be using gloves. You need some texturing because gloves aren't always the best at gripping stuff. So for me, I definitely need some. But in this case, the reason I use a Hoke grip isn't because of the lack of texturing. The M&P 2.0 has always had great texturing. This is more of recoil and handling that 357 SIG round. That's why I put it in that. But it's just another thing that they could very, very, very easily fix. I mean, it would cost them nothing to make these changes that I'm telling you about. Literally cost them nothing. But they don't do it. So no, Glock is not perfect. But where they really shine is this. People always come to my videos and say, oh, you know Glocks have malfunctions too. And I go, yeah, Glocks do have malfunctions. Every firearm brand, every firearm model in the world that's ever been produced has had malfunctions. So that's a fair statement, right? But I have a massive pool of that I can take these samples from, right? I have over 30 Glocks. I've only had one that has caused issues, and that was a Glock 45, and since my first 200 and something rounds, it's been flawless. And honestly, I think it was a magazine issue more than anything. A new magazine just needed to be set a little bit, some time to compress and just sit with some rounds in there, and then it started functioning. So I would say when it comes to reliability, they are dang near perfect. Now, they're never going to be 100% perfect, but from my experience I've seen with other people, my experience from just talking to people, Glocks just run. And no, they, they don't shoot the best after you dip them fully submerged in water, but there's also a $10 part that I put into my Glocks that in the case, let's say, I don't know, I get pushed off a boat in self-defense, right? You know, something ridiculous, something crazy where your firearm is fully submerged. You can get marine cups, maritime cups that will basically clear out that striker when you're shooting and allow you to cycle rounds. And that costs like $10. But people always mention the SIG versus Glock military contract, right? They're like, but SIG got that contract. SIG got the contract. Here's the thing. SIG got the contract because of price. Glock doesn't lower their prices. It just is what it is. Just like Glock doesn't give out free stuff. It just is Glock. That is how they do it. Another thing Glock doesn't do is they don't market. They don't get into the hype. They don't need it. It's like Glock is like a mysterious marketing company. They sell so many firearms without doing anything, and it's actually pretty crazy. So you see all the hype from these other companies and pushing and the marketing, and all these people need to get videos out on it. But then Glock just sort of releases stuff and says, hey, if they like it, they like it. If not, it is what it is. Not my problem. Like it's very interesting, their model, when it comes to how they promote their firearms. But there's a lot Glock could do better, and it's starting to show, and a lot of people are saying that about them. But the reason I go back to Glock is not only are they simple, not only are they reliable, but they are the best firearm to have when crap hits the fan. You don't believe me? I can go on eBay right now and order thousands of part kits, and they're not expensive. They're actually pretty cheap. It would show up right to my front door because that's not the serialized part. With a SIG FCU, that's the serialized part. So for your whole entire lower, it's serialized, right? With a Glock, I can order full parts kits all day long. If I had $1 million, I could order $1 million in parts kits today. And then if crap hit the fan, I would have 1 million part kits to swap out if anything ever went wrong with my firearm. Also, all the double stacks run the same parts about 80%. So those part kits would work in my 26, my 19, my 17, just like they would for my 27, my 23, and you get the the 22. You get the deal. And that's a huge thing. That's absolutely great to have. Also, I can take the whole thing down in 2 minutes, swap every part, and have this thing running again flawlessly. It's just a simplicity. I go back to Glock just for the peace of mind. Out of all the firearms brands I've had, I just have the best luck with Glock. I don't know if it's just how I shoot them. I don't know what it is. People always talk down on the trigger. Yeah, the trigger could be better, but is it bad? No. Is it shootable? Yes. Is it a reasonable defensive trigger? Yes. And also what's pretty interesting in those military contracts where SIG got the P320, which it's fine. It is what it is. It's interesting because they're all required to have a manual safety. So they brought the Glock 19X with a manual safety to the military contracts, which I thought was pretty interesting. That'd actually be pretty cool to see, for once, a Glock without a safety. But what I like about this also is the safety of the firearm without the manual safety. You don't need a manual safety on this. There's a reason why SIG had to tell everyone that, hey, if your firearm is doing this, we can put this part in there for you and make sure it doesn't go off on its own. You don't hear that from Glock. You know why? Because Glock has never had a drop safety problem in the history of Glock. Taurus has. SIG has. Other brands have. Glock has never had one. So when I pocket carry something like the Glock 42, I don't even double think, oh my goodness, could this go off in my pocket? It's not even something I could think about. Equipped with a pocket holster from Vetter or a decent pocket holster, you're going to be just fine. You never have to worry about it going off. You can drop your Glock. Nothing will ever happen. You can bang on your Glock. Nothing will ever happen. And that is a big thing for me. So when it comes to Glock being perfect, they're perfect in some areas, I would say, for me at least, which is reliability, peace of mind, shootability, aftermarket support, crap hits the fan. But when it comes down to what they give you right out of the box, they are not perfect. Better sights, better texturing, rails. I mean, there's a bunch that they can do. But at the same time, it's funny people talk down on Glock. But look, this is basically a mini Glock clone in the way it functions. Look right here, a mini Glock clone. If Glock wasn't doing something right, you wouldn't have a million clones going around. It just is what it is. The Torch G3C is basically a Glock. The Stoeger STR9 SC and the C and the full size, basically Glock. You have all Palmetto State Armory's whole pistol lines are based off Glocks. There's a reason for that, is because people in the firearm industry and community do realize that Glock's value comes from their ability to go bang every single time. You can get away with a Glock right out of the box, even with no night sights for everyday carry. You really could. But you are going to be given less than the average firearm. But like I said, when I shoot a firearm with this grip angle, it is the most natural to me. It is the easiest to get on target faster. I know it's going to go bang. I don't even have to second guess myself. And on top of that, they run all the ammo I like. And no, I'm not talking about RIP rounds, because those are just gimmicky and bullcrap. They do work decently on ballistic dummies, but on an actual self-defense encounter, no. And on top of that, you don't want them out of a Glock barrel. It just is what it is. But there's a lot more Glock could do. There's also a lot that they do great. And so in this case, I will say no. Glock perfection is not real. But at the same time, for me, when it comes to reliability and all those things I mentioned, that is the closest to perfection in those areas that I get with firearms like this. People say, oh, why don't you go out and get a staccato? Why don't you go get this? I just don't think it's necessary. I can get a firearm that's just as reliable. Yeah, I maybe can't shoot it as fast, but it's reliable. I can take that other $1,500 that it would cost me to get a better firearm and put it towards ammo and training and trading classes. And that extra $1,500 would take me more with a pistol like this than getting a staccato and not having that extra training and ammo and stuff like that would get me. Therefore, I see nothing wrong with having a $400, $500, $600 Glock, and just allowing it to take a beating and run its course and just stay reliable. The other thing about Glocks, like I said, is I know it's not part of them, but a lot of Glock's success comes from the aftermarket behind it, right? You can find anything for any Glock. I don't care what it is. There's a whole Glock store that literally has just everything you could ever imagine. I mean, it's unbelievable. And so I would definitely say when it comes to their aftermarket support, it's perfect, because you literally have more aftermarket support than any other firearm in the world. But like I was saying, no, Glock perfection is not real, but in some areas, it is. Thanks for watching, guys.